We have now reached the final mini bracket of the NFL quarterback bracket on NFL.com. It is the Baby Boomers bracket. Some of the most legendary players to ever play the position will be talked about now. This is James Nair here live on Real Steel Sports via Spreaker Web Radio. This bracket is one of the more interesting of the four. I can't say anyone's more interesting than the other. Maybe this one because of the star power. And that every single quarterback in this bracket is a Hall of Famer. And I guess that makes it pretty cool. But here we go. Matchup 1 is John Unitas versus Bob Griese. Number 2 is Roger Staubach versus Joe Namath. 3 is Bart Starr versus Fran Tarkenton, and 4 is Bradshaw versus Otto Graham. Let's start with 1 versus 8, Unitas versus Griese. There's no comparison here. Unitas, who is arguably the greatest quarterback of all time, set all the passing records before anybody else did, was the first real modern quarterback. Great in the clutch. Little fact about Unitas. Churches in Baltimore wanted to give everybody a chance to go to church and then go to the game when he played for the Colts. And here's why. The games would always start at 2 o'clock. Sunday started with God and ended with God. And it is said that God has only one place in the list, and that's number 1. Now, I'm not going to put God into this or any of that stuff. I'm just here to talk about who's better as a quarterback. Bob Griese was a really good quarterback for the system he was in, the run first, run second, throw third offense in Miami with Don Shula, led by them in the no-name defense that won 2 straight Super Bowls and was in another. But he doesn't compare to Unitas because he wasn't as prolific, wasn't really as great in the clutch, and at the same time he wasn't asked to do near as much, so you can't really tell for sure. Let's put it this way. I think it was Bob Kuechenberger, the Dolphins, said it best. If you were to put Bob Griese in the Jets and put Joe Namath on the Dolphins, the Dolphins wouldn't get above 500, and Bob Griese's arm would fall off because he'd have to throw so much. Advantage, checkmate, Unitas. Speaking of Namath, he appears in the 4 versus 5 matchup with Roger Staubach as his opponent. But let's get to the number 2 versus number 7. Number 2, Bradshaw versus 7, Otto Graham. I'm pissed. And this may be the only time you ever hear me talk about the Cleveland Browns in a good way. How the hell was Otto Graham a 7 seed? Some pundits call Otto Graham the greatest quarterback of all time because he won 7 NFL titles in 10 years and appeared in the title game in every other year. He appeared in a title game 10 straight years. Can Manning, Brady, Young, Montana, Bradshaw, Unitas, can they top that? No, not even Bart Starr can. But here's the point. No way he's a number 7, but at the same time, I really don't know what to say about him because I never really got a chance to see any of his highlights. I've seen him make some great plays. I've seen him throw some really good passes. But you have to realize back in the late 40s and early 50s, the Browns were so much superior to every team in the league. When they remember the All-American Football Conference from 46 to 49, they won all 4 titles, and then they won 3 in the NFL. They were just so damn good. Their teams were just so much better than everybody else's. So it's tough to compare. What you can compare is Terry Bradshaw. His career totals, his numbers are not impressive. Average pass rate, 2 more touchdowns and picks, above average, barely above 50% completion percentage. But he's better than Otto Graham because he was asked to do more. Even though the Steelers were a run-first team, Bradshaw threw the ball more, had a stronger arm than Otto Graham, and when he was on fire, there was nothing you can do. Otto Graham's had a couple of stinkers in big games in his career. Bradshaw, when he got into the Super Bowl, he played his best. And that's what you ask of a quarterback. Checkmate, Bud Barely, Bradshaw. I don't know if you noticed, but I'm having a little bit of a snack here. Doing a bunch of radio shows in a row, gets you kind of hungry. What I currently have is I'm dipping Cheetos in some wing sauce, and the Cheetos bag is almost empty. So by the time this show ends, I gotta go get the other one. Rule number 1: don't pick up my eating habits. They're good though. Let's put it this way: my girlfriend knew exactly how many Cheetos bags I go through a week. I think she'd probably call me fat. Nah, she wouldn't. But now let's move on to the 3 versus 6 matchup. And this matchup's more even than you'd think. Bart Starr versus Fran Tarkenton. Tarkenton never won a Super Bowl, lost 3 of them, and Bart Starr never lost lost 1 title game, but won the first 2 Super Bowls and 3 NFL titles. Actually, 5 NFL championships. The 2 of them were Super Bowls. So technically, if you wanted to count them separately, he won 7 titles. But really, you can't count them that way. You kind of have to count them as fair. Say they only won 5. But here's the point. He won a lot of titles and Tarkenton did not. So you'd think, Starr easily. Not necessarily. I look at Starr as a glorified version of Troy Aikman. And what I said about Aikman in my previous bracket discussion with the Millenniums bracket is that he was, at times, and for most of his career, millennials I should say, instead of millenniums, he was a glorified game manager. And yes, he was the MVP of the first 2 Super Bowls. And when he played in the Super Bowl in the NFL championship games, he was the de facto leader. But you can argue for a good portion of Starr's career in most of the games he played in, he was a bystander to Jim Taylor and Paul Hornett. But at the same time, I still think he's better than Fran Tarkenton. Now, NFL.com did a top 10 of the greatest mobile quarterbacks and listed Tarkenton number 1. And if you want to really know what Tarkenton was like, watch Johnny Manziel. With a lot less positive gaining runs. He'd run around the pocket all day. 2-3 times he'd go up the other side and down the other side and up and down, and then he'd throw the ball 40 yards downfield for a touchdown. I mean, he was so good. Tarkenton's the most underrated quarterback. And in my opinion, he should actually be the 4th seed. He should actually be the 5th seed, not the 4th seed. I'd put him behind Unitas, Staubach, Bradshaw, and Starr, but I would put him ahead of Joe Namath. I guess I know Namath won a ring, but here's the thing. Tarkenton was very good. He was accurate. He's the one who set all the records. He broke all the records Unitas set. And he was as good as a quarterback as you can find. And he was very, very good. It's just he had a one teensy-weensy, ever so slightly incompetent detail. Bad. Very bad in Super Bowls. To show you how bad, now let's be fair. He went against the no-name defense. In Super Bowl 8, the peak of its powers. Pardon me, I'm trying to prepare. He went against the Steel Curtain, which is the greatest defense in league history, no close second, in Super Bowl 9. And then he went against the Raiders defense, which had Willie Brown and Ted Hendricks on it. And that was a very good defense. In his career in Super Bowls, he's won in his touchdown to pick ratios 1-6. His completion percentage is well under 50%. Pardon me, I actually have to do that calculation myself. I apologize. Actually, it's slightly above 50%. I didn't think that. Apparently, in Super Bowl 14, in Super Bowl 11 against the Raiders, he apparently in Super Bowl 8 against the Dolphins, he completed over 60% of his passes, but ultimately they still fell 24-7. The point being is this: very good quarterback, very good in the regular season, and playoffs and Super Bowl average, Super Bowl very bad, below average. Not as good as Starr because of that reason. But still, the most underrated quarterback, I think, in NFL history. Maybe Kurt Warner is a very close second, but still. Now to the final first-round matchup. Staubach versus Namath, 4 versus 5. Namath's claim to fame is his guarantee. Other than that, his career is very, very average. Very average. In fact, if you look at the list of players who had a better career pass rating than Joe Namath, you'd be really stunned at what the name of some of these guys were. His career pass rating is 65.5. He never had a season above 74.3. Of the 13 years he played in the NFL, and I'm counting the year in LA as 1 year, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years he threw for more picks and touchdowns. Meanwhile, Roger Staubach is one of the greatest clutch quarterbacks of all time. He's Captain America. He is, as much as I dislike the 70s Cowboys, you gotta like Roger Staubach. He was so cool. And he was tough. He took a bunch of shots during his career. He just got right back up. He was tough. Very, very underrated as a quarterback. And I think he deserves a lot more credit than he gets for what he did. And I believe that he's better than Joe Namath by a wide margin. He's more consistent, better thrower, and better runner. Better in the clutch, more Super Bowl appearances, more rings. He has the edge over Namath in just about every category. And now I move on to, I'm going to do 2 versus 3 first. Terry Bradshaw versus Bart Starr. I want to settle this debate once and for all. Bart Starr is not better than Terry Bradshaw. Bradshaw is much better than Bart Starr. And I'll tell you why. Number 1. Terry Bradshaw's arm, laser rocket. In my opinion, the strongest arm to ever throw a football. Bart Starr's got a little bit of pop to it, but nothing impressive. Advantage Bradshaw. Play calling. Lombardi called the plays. Chuck Noll did not. Terry Bradshaw was the Steelers' de facto play caller. He made all the reads. He made all the throws. When Terry Bradshaw woke up in 1975, more or less, that was his first really good year, and became the quarterback he was anticipated to be when he was drafted number 1 overall. He was really good in 1975, average in 1976 and 77, but in 1978, his MVP year, 28 touchdowns and 20 picks doesn't sound like much, but when you consider the fact that they were still going against defenses that were playing really rough and physical, I might also add that, he went against some of the greatest teams in league history. The Raiders, the Cowboys, the Broncos had a good defense for a period of time. The Dolphins still had a bunch of their really good players on it. The Houston Oilers were up and coming. The Raiders, oh my God. The list of teams that Bradshaw had to go against, and he dissected them all. Look at his postseason numbers. His postseason numbers are very impressive. And the Super Bowl is even more impressive. in his career